the mic and have forgot to use it myself. So, as you all know, we are recording the meeting. So, prior to speaking, we are asking that you hit the icon with the man or the person that looks as if they're talking. So, you'll see that. It is important that you hit that prior to speaking and then hit it when you're done talking so that your voice can be recorded. Of course, we can hear you in the room, but because it is being recorded, we want to make sure that the audio team is able to capture what is being said. And so that's just a little bit of the housekeeping. I think everyone has an opportunity. The mics do swivel, so if we need to share mics, that works as well. And I am Jaha Martin. I know that we are still meeting some of our new board members, so we want to welcome each of you to the Homelessness Planning Council Board. We hope that our new board members are able to stay for our board orientation after this meeting. If not, then please get with April and myself and possibly one of her other staff members so that at some point you can get the information and we can orient you. There are plans later, maybe this fall or early winter, for us to do a larger board retreat just so that we can continue to move the mission forward of ending homelessness. And so, what I am going to do now is do roll call. And what we typically do with roll call is if, as I call your name, if you have a conflict of interest, if you would just advise me at that time, then that can be noted. Otherwise, you can simply just say present, no conflict. And also, we are going into a new season. So we do recognize we are entering into the fall season and we are continuously working to implement changes. And so we just ask that as a community, we continue to keep moving the needle along and staying focused on what our goal is. We are also entering, as you all know, into cold weather. So as you know, as a community, that's always an important piece for us to be mindful for, particularly for our neighbors that are unhoused, so that we make sure that we are keeping them protected as much as possible. So just be mindful of those things as we continue along. And at any time, if you all have questions, concerns, then feel free to reach out to April. And then April typically gets that information to me. As you all know, because of Metro rules and regulations and sunshine law, majority of the time I cannot communicate with you all individually unless we then come back and make a big announcement about what we talked about. So it's just easier to email April, and then typically April shares that information with me. So at this time, we are going to have the welcome. I just did the welcome. We're going to go through attendance. Stephen Handy, Liz Mallard,
Present, no conflict.
Deirdre Childress, Alex Smith, Jamie Villeg. I said I was going to get this today. Tell me how to pronounce the last name. How does she pronounce her last name? Villegas. Thank you, Susie. Catherine Knowles.
Present, no conflict.
You tell me how to pronounce your name, Miss Inslee.
Xadria Inslee.
Xadria Inslee. Thank
Present,
you.
no conflict.
Or Dr. Inslee. Deanna Allen Robb. I'm present, no conflict. Kanitha Patterson.
Present, no conflict.
India Pungacher.
Present, no conflict.
Amber Ellis. Freddie. Tell me how to pronounce your last name again.
Present, yes, conflict.
Pronounce your last name for me again.
Correctly.
Like Freddie.
Bakersfield.
Bakersfield. Tracy Pekovich. I'm not sure what's going on with me, y'all. Councilwoman Toombs, Councilwoman Evans, Councilwoman Sepulveda, Jason Ross, Ashley Horton, Laura Ferguson Mims,
Present, no conflict.
Corey Hammonds, Wendell C. Groves,
Present, no conflict.
Rico X,
That works.
Present, no conflict.
Adam Hansen,
Present, no conflict.
Tom Turner. Okay, and then the staff, we have April, Susie, Ginger. Great. Susie, why are you sitting back there today? Okay. I think we have a seat for you. Okay. At this time, we are at the point of public comments. We do have a public comment on two separate action item issues by Mr. Ryder. And so if you would come up, Mr. Ryder, and we will give you 2 minutes for each comment, and you can just advise, do you want to do, which one would you like to do first? Strategic plan or PEC?
Strategic plan.
Okay, your time starts now, and Miss Allison is right there to let you know.
Okay. With regards to the strategic plan, it mentioned housing focused, and you can't really be housing focused unless you have a housing committee. I mean, that's just basic. So we keep talking about housing. We're here to end homelessness, but we don't have that committee. We really need that. On the extremely low income, you have it mentioned there, it's like 19,850. I don't know where that number comes from, but if you're looking at 0 to 30%, if you do the math, that doesn't work out. So kind of review that. The goals, one of the objectives, 1.4, establish effective metrics. And there are no metrics once again. It's really a reporting requirement is all I see here. So what I would ask is that you have the continuum of care and the collaborative applicant work together on establishing those metrics. Because without metrics, you don't have a plan, with all due respect. You need to have that. With regards to 2.1B, Roman numeral 3, I have to look that one up here real quick. I apologize for that. I'm not fully prepared this morning, as I probably should be. 2.1. Okay, no, I got it right here. Yeah. Work with all departments and everything, and so it's just really not clear. There's so much that's vague and ambiguous here. An MOU would establish that, what you're trying to do. With regards to housing inventory, it's really difficult. Okay.
Thank you. Do you want to move to your next public comment related to the Performance Evaluation Committee?
Can I review my notes? Can you just put that on pause and put me to the hill for like 10 minutes so I can do that? Because I'm just
We
not fully
cannot, just because of how the ordinance is that it's at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. Well, the Performance Evaluation Committee, I applaud their work that they're trying to do. I think they're going to be very helpful for us with regards to reviewing applicants for the collaborative applicant application. I think they really do a good job. I don't want to put too much on them. And so I guess I'll just leave it at that for right now. So look forward to the rest of the meeting. And thanks for everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay. We are at the point of our moment of silence and remembrance to those who have unfortunately lost their lives since the last time we met. And so I will read the names and then we will have a moment of silence to remember those lives. Antonio Booker, Charles Eddie Lawson, Tangela Knox, Jerry Washington, Christopher Brian Scott, Julia Ray, Blackie James Jim Skinner, Richard Broom, Corey Kephart, Donald Lee Stennis, Stephanie Vaughn, and Justin Goodrich. If we could just take a moment to remember those individuals. Thank you all so much. At this point, we are at the review of our July meeting minutes. They are before you and have also been emailed out to you prior to the meeting. If you could at this time advise of any noted corrections or edits. It'll be August. And your agenda it should say your August meeting minutes, not July. And the meeting minutes are August. Any corrections, edits?
Yeah, Steve Ryder's name on page 1, it's Reiter.
Thank you. Any other corrections? All right, hearing none, we will move forward in our agenda to the report from the Office of Homeless Services Director, April Calvin.
Hello, everyone. There's a lot of great stuff going on here in Nashville. So, some of the stuff you're going to hear about in a little bit, so I won't repeat, just for the sake of time. Public comments, I want you all to definitely want to go on record of saying that we are posting the items that they will be speaking on, actually on the nashville.gov website, along with the agenda. So, like the strategic plan, the PEC rank and review. They can review all of those documents online, thanks to a suggestion from someone in the public. So I was able to help that move along. Also, there's some important dates. This Friday, I think Susie's going to talk a little bit about the September 14th Equity and Diversity or training or conference that we're having. And then September 18th and 19th, you would have received an email maybe last night or the day before. There's another free conference with the Family Collective, and there's a registration link in the email that I sent if you all would like to attend. One other thing as far as dates, the participatory budget, you all may have heard us talk about that. There's $10 million that Metro set aside for community participatory budget, where there were great ideas and anything from like playgrounds for children and parks all the way to maybe RV parks as it relates to homelessness. So not sure of the final, how they whittled that down, but also they reached out a couple of days ago because they are wanting to make sure our unhoused population will have access and opportunity in order to cast their vote. It is a vote online they can use from their cell phone. They're drafting some publications to send out. As soon as I get that, I'll send it to you all. They do have some concern about, making sure that, someone's not overvoting or that there's no fraud as it relates to that. So we have identified a couple of locations that our unhoused can use for an address if they spent any time there. And there is a way to deduplicate some of that information. So I've talked with Salvation Army, Room in the Inn, Nashville Rescue Mission, and the contributor, but I think the contributor uses the Salvation Army's address. So I've talked with them to ensure that multiple people can use their address and connected them with Fabian to help with moving that along. So that's exciting. I'm not sure what will come out of it, but it's $10 million, a one-time. It's another part of some ARPA funds that we have here in Nashville. And so we had a pre-onboarding with several of you all that are new to HPC. Right after this, we will have our orientation. You should have received the agenda and or an invite. Allison Malone is really great at ensuring you guys have all the information that you need. There will be a binder that will be distributed to you all. There's some things as far as what triggers public meetings and conversation as it relates to this governing body that definitely you'll hear from Metro Legal on. So just want to make sure that we're in compliance. Funding, I always like to talk a little bit about funding and a lot about housing if we have any updates on any of that. So funding, the $50 million, you have that package, kind of an update that we share with Metro Oversight Committee every month. So you all get the exact document that we share with them. We will submit one for September, even though there's not going to be a Metro Council meeting. We will definitely send one to the Human Service Committee and others to distribute and share, even though there won't be a presentation. As you'll see, all of the funds have been distributed and or allocated, except for the $4 million competitive grant. We knew that we wanted to, on purpose, delay putting that RFP out simply because we wanted to give other agencies time to get moving with what they actually have been awarded or throughout all this other stuff that's going on. You'll hear a little bit about it. So there is the RFP for the competitive grants that's out and it closes, I'm not sure of the date, but my team will know if you all need any information on that. But it's actually on our website, nashville.gov/homelessness or homeless. It's on our website. So if you need any information on that. We are gearing up for cold weather shelter options, and we'll talk a little bit about that during our shelter committee. So more to come after that meeting. Housing cultivation, there's a lot going on with housing that takes a little bit of time, right? So I know I talk a lot about like Shangri-La. I've been here 18 months. We have talked about Shangri-La since I walked through the door. So I do want you to know they are still on board. They have received a little bit of Barnes Fund. They have received some affordable gap loan funding, or they're applying, I believe, and a couple of other things. They received some supportive service dollars through the $9 million. They're partnering with Step Up. So there's a lot going on there, and they will bring on 88 units that will be in the Antioch, Harding Place district area there. Yeah, it's a hotel conversion, so it will just be units for singles. Out of the $9 million, thank you, because that takes me back to the $9 million, the $50 million, $25 million that was actually with MDHA. There is being a helping hand. They applied for the first round of affordable gap loan, and they brought on only 2 units, but those 2 units can house 13 people. So there's 2 families, large families, like a family of 6 and a family of 7, that will be going into those units. They've already been renovated and they're ready to move. So we're excited about that, which comes right on time for some other things that you guys are going to hear about in a little bit as well. So, I want to talk a little bit about the outdoor housing strategy. I think we have like the perfect synergy of 3 things that are happening, kind of in a row, but all together, it seems like as well. The outdoor housing strategy, the update there is, we've closed with the housing surge, providing support services and housing opportunities for everyone in those locations, 2 other locations, and this would be the 3rd. The interim gap housing fund was a fund that was designed to have interim housing for situations like this. And we've worked with the state on several locations. The other two locations that we were successful in moving people into housing involved a little bit of metro land, a little bit of state land, and some private area sector as well. So for me, I felt like that was probably one of the best practices ever. The state has asked for us to move forward with some of their locations. The TA truck stop is mainly state property. They were ready and willing to post that location back early spring. We asked for summer. Then I asked to delay again because we were not quite ready. And now we are, now we've moved forward with the date. October 6th is the date. So if you all want to, some volunteer hours to help any of our nonprofits or our outreach team, we would welcome your help. We have some scheduled dates and times that we will go to the location, continue to love on the people, make sure that they feel supported and that they have housing opportunities to go into. In the past, I've printed the letter that we shared, and I didn't print it for today because it's really the same letter, but I should have printed it. And it really basically says this location is closing, but we ask you to stay here because help is on the way. We will provide support services, interim housing options for people that live in that location. We are also wrapping up our voucher subsidy surge, which was really great. MDHA had about 198 vouchers that was deployed to our city, emergency housing choice vouchers. They were deployed to our city. They will leave our city September 30th of this month. And we were severely, as a community, severely underutilizing those funds. Sally's not here. In her honor, I will say, she took CE on the road. We revised our process. We embedded ourselves in the agencies that actually know and love the clients and did CE applications and Section 8 applications right there on the spot to get some of this moving so that we did not lose those vouchers. I'm happy to say we are at total leased up, we're at 170 that's been leased up. We have maybe about 30 to 40 that are awaiting some level of inspection through MDHA, and they're looking to help expedite that. And then we also have another 15 to 20 that are waiting for approvals from the apartment complex. We know that that's going to be over the 190, but what MDHA, our gracious partners, have said is if we go over the 190 with full lease-ups, then they will figure out a way to repurpose those so that they won't lose those vouchers. So we have, yay! So I'm going to end on a good note. That's all I have. Thank you all so much.
Any questions for Director Calvin? Yes, Ms. Robb.
So I'm just curious, and I apologize for my voice and my tardiness this morning, but I'm curious, going back to the participatory budget process, and I'm going to look at my colleague over here. Is there a way to more intentionally engage the CAB in getting perspective on how that $10 million could also be spent as we're trying to be intentional about engaging our unhoused neighbors in the conversation? I'm just curious.
So that policy or that process was really a mayoral-led policy. That's not something that was even offered to us other than for us to review some of the items that actually came in to see if it was feasible or if it was something that could live in our budget or if it was something that was sustainable on the other side. I'm not sure of where all of that started, but I can definitely make sure that I'll pass that comment on to Fabian from the mayor's office.
Jamie was first, and then I'll come back to you, India. And Jamie, have you pressed the?
So I do have a question for you about the residents who we have at the hotel from Brookmead Park. It is now 10 months since they have been removed from the park, and a good number of them have still yet to put through the process. A lot of them are still lacking documentation in order to get their Section 8 vouchers. I've heard reports of, violence happening at the site, especially around the security guards. I'm really concerned about this because, in 2 months, they're about to be back in the same position that they were in when they started, on the street. And I want to know what we plan to do to try to try to kind of make sure that these people don't fall through the cracks. I mean, especially since, having come from Brookmead Park, it's just very concerning that, that it feels like these people are literally falling through the cracks. And I want to make sure that we told these people that we'd be able to help them. I've heard concerns that organizations such as Colby's Army are no longer allowed to help out on the site. And I just want to know what we're doing to make sure that we get these people the things that we promised that we'd do for them.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jamie. I appreciate your concern. Those are some concerns that I express as well, quite honestly. We have weekly meetings with the interim gap housing locations to express those concerns as well. And I would say the documents for me, we have people that's lived outside for over 5 years. Documents should be something that is attained and offered to them. That's just a national best practice for outreach. And that should be something that happens while they're still outside. We should not have people outside as a community. I don't feel comfortable with that, having people outside for over 5 and 10 years and they don't have the essential documents that's needed to move into housing. I have expressed some of these concerns to even the interim gap housing locations that say they're still waiting on documents. So that's something that is high on our radar, and we're really pushing pushing those organizations to move a little bit faster. If there's something, and our interim gap housing funds will help cover the documents as well. So we're working on that. I think, not sure of when you say that there was violence with the security guards. Early on, there was some, having the security guards having to separate individuals. So I don't think that's been a concern since December or, January or so. I don't have that data in front of me. And I heard you say in 2 months they're going to be back on the streets. That is not the case. That is not the case. They will stay there until housing is offered or afforded to them. And so when you heard me talk about a voucher housing surge or a subsidy surge, our community was underutilizing vouchers, and not in the way of not being able to connect them to landlords, but underutilizing them in the fact that we were not even applying for them. So when CE went on the road, CE really revved their engines to increase applications. MDHA was able to move forward with expediting some of that work as well. So it's a lot of moving parts in this, but a majority of them will qualify for the emergency housing choice vouchers. One thing that I did not talk about, we were on a Housing First Conference webinar yesterday with National Alliance to End Homelessness, and some other great organizations. And some of this is what they talked about as far as Housing First as well. So I think as a community, we are a little bit behind as it relates to getting people documents, making sure that their stay in these interim housing units are short. But I will say we're not alone in that. There's other communities that are muddling through it. But weekly, we have calls with those organizations to figure out ways to, how can we help as a department, how can we help expedite that process? So, but no one will be in 2 months. There's not anything on my radar that will say that they're going to be returned to the streets. That's not an option. Oh, Colby's Army, one other question. Colby's Army, I have expressed to her, and I think the interim gap housing locations have expressed to her that she is welcome there on the site. I believe that they've had some peer support that actually went to the site, even on their own. it's not something that we manage or exclude people out. I think that there's a couple of council oversight committees where I expressed there was over 25 agencies providing up to 27 services to the people that live there. Anything from helping to get their laundry done, some pet care, neighborhood health is providing some medical attention there. There may be a little bit of concern with security, asking who's on the site and verifying and checking as they come on. But we want that simply because that before security was there, it was more, people that were used to going to the camps and taking advantage of our people than support services there. There were supportive service partners that were saying they didn't feel comfortable going there. So I welcome that security is there and checking to see who's on the property. We're not excluding anyone from those sites. But thank you for for that information, and I would love to chat with you afterwards because I don't want that to be a misconception in our community.
I had a different question about the participatory budget, but just really quick, I just wanted to clarify. So like at roadway, and thank you, Jamie, for bringing this up. I didn't realize we're on the almost year mark post Brookmead. But so just to clarify, there is funding to make sure that people that are at roadway can stay there over a year, because I know originally folks had a year lease. There's funding for that if they haven't secured permanent housing at that year mark.
So the year lease is the Salvation Army initiative. That's not us, right? So for Metro, those funds will cover them until they are housed, and or if there needs to be an application process to apply for new funds, or I don't think that right now we're at a point where we would say they can't stay there.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. And then I just wanted to add about the participatory budget. Open Table Nashville, where I work for, we are one of the community partners for the participatory budgeting process. And while you can't submit new ideas, and there's a committee with people on it that tried to narrow down all of the ideas and projects that were submitted, the next part of the processes will help, similar to, it sounds like what April will be doing with other orgs. We'll have a few different opportunities for people to come and cast their votes, and so I can make sure that that could be another opportunity for the CAB to get involved in terms of voting on which projects they would like to see happen. And just also we made sure that we had people experiencing homelessness and also people that were housed participate in our idea collection events that we hosted, and we did submit an idea on behalf and with some Old Tent City residents, so excited to see what comes of that.
Thank you, Jamie, for bringing that issue to the fore. Can you guys hear me? I think it would be helpful. I'm appreciative of the traction that we're gaining in addressing this issue and appreciate hearing all of the wonderful things that are happening. But I think it's equally important that issues like you've brought to the fore are brought to this committee as part of the report so that we can have some collective thinking and thought partnership about how to address those issues. Prior to you bringing that to the table, I wasn't tracking that at all with our formerly unhoused Brookmead brothers and sisters. So I think what I'm saying is when this report is coming to us each month, we want to celebrate the wonderful things that are happening, but we also want the areas of potential refinement and reinforcement to be brought forward to this committee also.
Absolutely. So you all know I have said from the beginning that we know that these are human lives and we are all trying to figure it out. And so one of the things is that we look at what worked well, but we know that there are some things that have not worked well. So we appreciate that. I do have it down for us to review that. And I'll say again, I know this was one of the gaps we recognized, our supportive services. And how do we, at the beginning, document collection is critical. Just as much as we're getting to assess people, I'm hopeful that each outreach worker and we are doing that. And so again, there are models out there and we are hopeful to also bring people in to help support our efforts with that. So we appreciate it, and we will actually,
my thoughts are, so that it doesn't look as if we aren't being concerned, is that we bring this back up next month just to give an update as to where we are with those residents and how are we doing this as we move forward. Because the reality is, I would love to see them get permanently housed so that then we can create new transitional spaces for those as it's needed. So just know, part of what I'll talk about in the board orientation, this is the part of where what I have often seen is, as board members, it's great for us to come to meetings, but we are also inclined to do some of the work. I'm like, do I need to be at Brookmead trying to help people get documents? I don't have a problem doing that. Not saying that you all have to do that part, but what I am saying is that when we are aware, then we can be solution focused. So thank you all for that. And moving forward to Susie with the MDHA Collaborative Applicant Report.
Can you hear me? All right. Good morning. I'm Susie Tolmie with MDHA. Just a few things to go over. We're in the final throes of the annual competition for the Continuum of Care homeless funding that comes from HUD. We're not having fun yet, but we will be in October 1st. The deadline is September 28th, and I've been working really closely with a number of April's staff and April on responses to all the questions that will be as strong as possible and hopefully give us a very high score. If we get a high score, then later on you'll hear from Carrie Dietz, the chair of the Performance Evaluation Committee, about projects that fall into the second tier. The first tier of the projects are fairly secure. The second tier are a little bit dicier. But if our community score is high enough, the projects that fall into a certain area of tier 2 would be fairly secure as well, and we would get additional funding for Nashville, which would be fabulous. In corralling all the cats, that role at MDHA is called the collaborative applicant, and MDHA has served in that role for eons, but it is not interested in applying for what's called the RFP for the new collaborative applicant. There's been a really organized ad hoc group to look into how to solicit a new collaborative applicant agency, and that draft request for proposals has been sent out twice for public comment, and those comments are due by the end of the day tomorrow. As of the end of last week, I looked in my email and there weren't any, but if you want to issue any, they are due by the end of the day tomorrow. I'm kind of thinking, I was talking to Giovanni about why there haven't been public comments, and I really do feel that that committee has been very forthright and transparent with the COC general membership and other stakeholders in town, and done a very, very good job at keeping people apprised of what's going on and the system and the process. It's been a delight to see, because people are really pleased with it, and I don't have them very often. So anyway, public comments, if you have any, please do issue them forth. Number 2, again, Carrie Dietz, who is against the wall by the door there as the chair of the PEC, is going to be presenting later about 2 items. She's going to be talking about the reallocation policy, and she's going to be talking about the ranking process for her committee. And just a personal editorial about those emergency housing vouchers. They do have to be leased up or sort of committed by the end of this month. But unlike all of the other vouchers that MDHA administers, after the 1st of September, if people fall out of those units, they don't stay in Nashville. So if they get evicted or leave the unit, that goes back to the federal kitty. And so I think it's really important to look at sources of funding and resources in town who can provide case management and retention supports to those folks who may be somewhat fragilely housed, because if they lose their unit, the unit goes away from Nashville for good. So we've got 198 to play with right now, and that number is only going to get less. And those retention supports are harder to come by. A lot of you provide emergency or transitional services, and then you got to lean on the mainstream resources out there. And so I encourage you guys to begin thinking about how those folks are going to stay housed, because if they lose it, Nashville loses it. Thanks.
Any questions for Susie? Yes, Councilwoman Evans.
Thank you. I guess Susie, your report, one question that I had from it was kind of the idea that the vouchers, if people are evicted, the entire city loses basically. And I guess, is there anything that you can, or we can bring forward maybe to the next meeting that gives detail about what are the things that are causing people to have issues and potentially lose their housing? If it's access to other services, if it's, work issues, if it's access to support for like utilities, those kinds of things. I'd just be interested if there's anything that's captured that speaks to that.
I think that's a great question. And I think it would also be a good idea to add to that conversation, listing the resources that exist out there who can support retention. The program hasn't been operating for a really long time, but I can get information from Norman Deep, who's over the rental assistance department, about any folks who have lost housing already. I don't suspect that there are that many. In the Shelter Plus Care program, which is similar, it's rental assistance for homeless folks, we have a somewhat arcane system, but it's working, where Norman Deep, the director of rental assistance, will send me names of people who at the end of each month are due to be terminated simply because they have not recertified for the voucher, which is absolutely absurd. And so I, at the beginning of the month, will send to the agencies that made those referrals a notice that they're getting ready to lose housing and then end in the month, and could you please do something? And often it has either fallen off of their radar, and they do help the recertification process, and those folks retain their housing. There are a number of other reasons why people are evicted, of course. Violation of lease, non-payment of rent, you name it. But he would probably have a very succinct list of reasons in similar projects why people do lose their housing, and I'd be glad to present that next time.
Thank you.
Deanna?
Yeah, just real quickly, and this is more so directed at April. I will just recall, last month whenever we met, our HBC member Alex talked about the importance of peer support being another strategy to help people stay in their housing placement. And then I will just call that back up since Alex isn't here, but I think it's pertinent to the question that you're asking about how can we be sure that we keep those vouchers here in Nashville?
Anyone else? Kanitha?
Thank you. I'd like to add to what Deanna said as well. And as we've heard here, I'd say a couple times, going back to the cab, I say we've had maybe 3 meetings, and each time I've had on the agenda an inventory of what we have or not, and trying to build that list as an ongoing list. So exactly to what they're saying, where was missing from the conversation and the solutions. It's made pretty hard to go forth on those things. It's like when you mention things like that, which I feel like they're rooted totally in the truth and what we know from living it and what we know from falling through the cracks. So there is a whole legacy court, there is right to counsel, but when we try to access those things, we are blocked. So therefore, making the things work together and just simply providing access for the whole committee that's supposed to be doing that work, I feel like, and we're very capable of doing that work. Again, and if you're utilizing peers, we're out there getting done exactly everything that's missing. So that's just my comment on that.
And just a reminder for anyone that is interested for peer support, I know that most, and I'm not sure of all, but many of the agencies do require the peer support certification. And that's just because in terms of best practices, we do want people to have some level of training and support. So not saying that people don't have that at all, and this isn't in any conflict, but what I am saying is that sometimes
that has been somewhat of a preclusion for us to be able to just bring out, and then we still have to consider some of the confidentiality purposes. So definitely, we know peer support works. My agency, we use it all the time. So I'm a huge advocate of peer support. I'm just reminding people that as we are progressing and then as funding becomes available through agencies, to make sure you go ahead and get your certification if you haven't done so already. And that doesn't mean we don't still want to hear from you in terms of what your suggestions are. Yes, ma'am.
I am peer certified. Also, actually, I do have a connection to make sure all the other people get peer certified as well. That's what I mean by we're capable. And if we have an inventory of even who we are, then you will know exactly, what we are able to provide and or, because I mean, even with saying my lived experience does not mean I'm not educated in other places either. So without knowing that, you don't, you know what I mean? So it's just the fact of, okay, when we come up with solutions, it's met with adversity every time of why we cannot do this. But every solution is coming up with, we need to talk to the cab, we need lived experience. How do we include that if at every turn we're being basically, I don't know exactly how to put this, but it's just like our voice is still muted to a huge sense just because we're speaking on truth. And if I can't tell my story, how do you know how I fell through the cracks? How do you know how to connect the dots? We know how to connect the dots because we fell through the cracks. So it all is this big circle that has to be accepted is the thing. So I just want to add that.
And I appreciate that. And one of the things that I will honestly admit, I had a rough first year. Y'all know that, right? So in this second year, one of the things, along with my co-chairman, we recognize we do have to get the committees better organized and add support. And I'll say one of the things that I have expressed to April I need to do is I need to come to some of the committee meetings. And so not to make excuses, but I just was trying to survive last year and get some of this done and organized. And so I feel like I finally am getting my footing and, balancing other things. So I apologize to you for that because I do know I've not been present. My goal, which was to get it back started, and we started. And so now I do want to make sure you all get the supports that you need. And so I will definitely, for myself, I can't attend all meetings, but between Laura and I, we will look at what supports we can provide to you as well as to the OHS team. So that's part of what we're hearing today in terms of moving forward. Councilwoman Evans, I have to follow up on the agenda retention strategies because I do think we can do it. And I'll say again, I know oftentimes VA is not portrayed well in the media, but I will say I think that we were one of the first in terms of with housing first and having the supportive case management. And so it's work, and we do need to figure out as a community until we can get all of the RFPs fixed. How can we move forward and make sure people are getting what they need? So definitely, we can look at that moving forward. So thank you all for that. Moving forward to we'll have Hannah come with the HMIS monthly data report, and then we'll move after that with Ms. Hauser for the mayor's office report.
Need to push a button on here. Oh, someone else did it for me. Okay, hello everyone. Here is our monthly data that we are looking at. I'm saying it out loud, so I have to do it. Last month, I talked about making a new format for the monthly report. So next month, we will have the new format. So now I have to make sure I do it in time. But for this one, 1,651 people who are experiencing homelessness were housed in Nashville from September of last year through August of this year. This is a 20% decrease from last year, as we talk about every time. Due to the ending of ESGCV funding, we've been housing fewer people in our community than we were during the height of COVID with that funding. But August was a very good month for Nashville and housing. 189 people experiencing homelessness moved into housing. There's a typo in here, but that is the most people in a single month since January of this year, so in quite a long time. And someone last time asked for me to add August of last year on here as well. So that's on here. We can see last August we housed 171 people. So we were higher this August. Additional things I want to highlight are that 128 people so far this year have moved into housing with a housing choice voucher, which is more than the entirety of 2022. So April keeps talking about this housing surge. That has been successful. We've made a lot of progress with housing choice vouchers. And I also wanted to highlight Safe Haven Family Shelter had a really good month. They housed 57 people by themselves just in August, so that's great. Shout out to them. I know Grant's here a lot, so maybe he's here. We can say congrats, but if not, thank you, Safe Haven Family Shelter. The one negative thing I did want to highlight on this report is that for the past several months, the number of people in street outreach programs has been decreasing, which, if our data is accurate, might tell us that there are fewer people living outdoors. But this month, it did increase for the first time in about 6 months. So there are more people potentially living outdoors. And the last thing I wanted to highlight on the front page is just on that bottom part, the housing exits by destination of where people are moving into housing. So the majority, 47% in the month of August, were moving in with rapid rehousing. Another 14% were moving in with friends and family. Another 14% moving into housing with no subsidy, and then 11% with housing choice vouchers. Does anyone have any questions about this report? All right, cool.
All right, thank you, Hannah. I guess before Ginger comes, we just want to thank Ginger. We know this, I guess after tomorrow, huh? This administration will be on to bigger and better things. So thank you, Ginger, for all of your work and participation and assistance. We hope we get someone from whoever will be our next mayor. They're going to have some big shoes to fill. So hopefully they can do it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was going to be my first comment is this position serves at the pleasure of the mayor. So as this transitions in administration, the next mayor will select who's going to sit on this body. So just stay tuned. So we'll all be kind of waiting. I have some transition documents that I think have been handed over to transition teams. So we'll just see how that goes. Council Lady Evans and I are continuing to work on the resolution that was passed with council and the pod issue, still continuing to have those conversations. A few thoughts, maybe personally, is I do want to say I was really excited. This is not really mayor's office report, but the challenge to house 100 families in 100 days, and many people in this room and many Metro Council members and both mayor's candidates were at that event, and it was really heartwarming, I think, to see so many community groups, nonprofits come together and have a challenge. Is really exciting to me to see the advancement that the city has done as it relates to homelessness, but then also the nonprofit and philanthropic community moving forward with some initiatives as well. And I do think there is an opportunity as we gain momentum with the investments that the city has made to really begin to build that philanthropy and nonprofit partnership so that, and hopefully state partnership as April and I continue to work on those pieces. I think there is a real opportunity to use the momentum in bigger ways in the future. So that's part of some of the transition documents to the next administration, and it is my hope that that can occur. But I was really excited to get to participate in that event. And I know many of you are involved in that, and I just want to applaud the efforts. It might be something for this body. I know we're hearing from Lowe's today on the good news, but it might be that initiative, something in the future to hear from. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, April, that we want to bring up at this point. I don't think so. I think I'm just, preparing for the transition documents. We'll continue to stay involved if so chosen to do so. And I'm just really proud of the work that this body has done over the past year plus, it has been a large transformation and where this body was a year plus ago. A year ago, we didn't have a separate office of homeless services. We didn't have a full board. We didn't necessarily have a solid leadership team of this body or at the city, and I think that is a lot to accomplish in a year. We're utilizing our vouchers. We're making unprecedented investments in ending homelessness, and that is a lot to accomplish in a year. It doesn't mean that there's still not a lot of work to do, but I'm just glad I've gotten to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, April and I think it was last week, had our final meeting with Mayor Cooper. And so we will look forward to see what's next, but definitely thankful for leadership. I know politically there can oftentimes be differences of opinions, but I think one of the things that we have to do too as a body is make sure we're holding whomever is elected accountable and hopefully making sure that they keep this as a priority. And how do we do that in a seamless fashion, in a way in which we make sure that those that are most vulnerable are still being considered citizens of this city. So that is one of the things I know April and I have really looked at and expressed as a need in terms of moving forward. So moving on to new business, we will have Carrie Dietz come with the Continuum of Care fiscal year 2023 Performance Evaluation Committee rankings. And again, I just want to reiterate the work that this committee does. I know I am on a performance evaluation committee for another Continuum of Care and had the joy of going through all of those lovely applications and ranking them. And it is a tedious job. So thank you all to your committee for the hard work that you're doing and under your leadership. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Carrie Dietz, chair of the PEC. And as you've heard, we've just gone through kind of what we do, the main thing that we do, which is review, score, and then rank applications for COC competition dollars. So we have had several, applications, new and renewal applications this year. You should have the ranking results in front of you if you want to take a look. Basically, what I'm going to do today is ask y'all to approve the ranking that the committee came up with. But before I do that, I want to explain a little bit about how we got to where we are. So we had, we reviewed all of the applications that came in. The renewal applications, it's pretty straightforward. We kind of have that down to a science now where it's mostly just based off of the data. The new applications, the new program applications can be a little bit trickier. It requires us to dive into the weeds a little bit more because we're not able to rely on that kind of past performance data. So we did the renewal projects, we did the new projects, and we ran those through the system and the scoring matrix that we have been working on for several years and tweaking. I've been here before talking about that. And so what we got at the end was, all of the different scores for the different projects. And what had once our committee to do during this process, it's 2 steps. So we go through the scoring, that's purely objective numbers, kind of see what gets spit out. And then after that, they want us to go through and rank them in order of priority. So the product is essentially a list of, these are all the applications that we have. We send that off as a community to HUD and say, these are the programs that we would like to have funded in order of priority that they're listed here. And the ranking process is a little more subjective. That's where we talk about our local priorities, specific needs for the community, that kind of thing. So this year, we had some great input from the Data and HMIS committee about how they showed us some documentation and some data showing that there's just a really huge gap in our community in terms of permanent supportive housing for adults without children in the household. So just across the board, those households are really struggling to make the same progress that we've seen with families and other groups. So we decided in the ranking process to listen to what they said, prioritize permanent supportive housing units and specifically permanent supportive housing units for adult households without children. So that's part of what went into how we tweaked the rankings and how we came up with what we did. The result is what you have before you. As Susie mentioned earlier, there are 2 tiers. Tier 1 is pretty much safe. We're fairly confident the community is going to get that amount of money. Tier 2 is a little more in doubt. We're just not sure how much money we're going to get as the community overall. Certainly, a lot of the work that we do is aimed at getting that number as big as possible, but to some extent, we just don't know what that's going to look like. So projects that fall below tier 2 are at risk of not being funded. We just don't know. Last year, everything got funded. We have no idea this year what's going to happen. So anyway, this ranking has been presented to all of the agencies and programs that applied. They had a deadline of yesterday morning to file any appeals. If they wanted to appeal where their projects were placed in the ranking, we had no appeals. So we have this list of the ranking and here today asking you all to approve it. Happy to answer any questions about the ranking or the process if anybody has any.
Any questions? Yes.
Good morning. Great job. Thank you. Thank you for everything that your committee does. I do have one question. I'm looking at the 2022 rankings and the 2023 rankings, and they're almost identical. All the projects, the ranks are almost the same. I'm confused.
So there's a few things to keep in mind that might be contributing to that. Some is that one of the first things is that certain projects aren't scored. So the HMIS and the
Coordinated entry,
thank you, are not scored. Those aren't traditional projects like the other ones. They're not really providing housing. So we put those at the top automatically just to make sure that we have the funding to administer everything else. And then in terms of the renewal projects that have come in and been doing this for a long time, it's not surprising to see some consistency. We've certainly been working across the board with everybody to get their scores as high as possible to help the community look as good as possible. But obviously, we also want to be able to distinguish between them. So, the renewal projects, there's not necessarily going to be that much change in a given year. Another thing to keep in mind is that we did have some new projects this year that applied. And to your point about, how does it look the same this year as it did last year? One of the most discussed issues was ranking this new project from the contributor. We decided that we really wanted to acknowledge that we have a new agency that's interested in initiating a new program. We want more of that. So, I know it may look like not a lot has changed, and a lot of that's because this is a pretty data-driven process, but then the ranking process where we get to come in with the priorities, that's where you'll see a little bit more movement, but also the new projects, just the nature of them. Some of them apply for these bonus funds, which are a little even more uncertain than the regular funds. So you kind of see those toward the bottom of the list. That's where we've really kind of done the tweaking, is around that tier level to make just really strategic decisions about how to maximize the amount of money coming into the community and make sure that we look as good as possible, and also that we're distinguishing and making the right calls about who gets funding. I'm not sure if that helps answer your question, but there's going to be some fair consistency over time. We would love for more new projects to apply and have this list look, different next year with more projects from more agencies. And that's one of the things that we're working on long term.
I just wanted to back up Carrie's point that HUD really does want to see new agencies getting access to the funding opportunity. So that will actually give us I would imagine it will give us a few points and strengthen the entire community's proposal. But I also wanted to say that the Performance Evaluation Committee, in putting these bonus projects at the tail end, they wanted to see how they had ranked things last year and the year before. And in both of those years, they ranked those bonus projects toward the end, and we still got the funding. So I think that there was some strategy involved there to preserve the existing resources, but to know that at least in the past 2 funding cycles, those bonus projects have been ranked at the very bottom, but still we've gotten some of that funding.
I would say certainly last year getting all of the funding, I'd be more concerned about it looking really similar to last year if we hadn't done as well as a community as we did last year. But we got all of the funding, and that was certainly part of what went into our decision making this year. Sorry, Susie. Go ahead.
Well, and I was just going to say that project number 7, is it 7? No, project number 7 and project number 9 and 10. Those 3, I think you guys might be one of them, but those 3 projects do not have a full year of operating under their belt, so we couldn't look at the performance from the annual performance report. And that happens every year. Agencies get the award, and they don't hear from HUD for months before they get a contract. So there are slow starts typically to those new projects. And therefore, the ranking committee has typically taken the average of all the rest of the projects and assigned that average score to the projects that don't have a full year of operating yet. So you'll see the average was 77%, and all 3 of those projects that didn't have that history that we needed were automatically scored with the average.
Hello. So I have 2 kind of comments or questions, if you will. So what is being done as far as like with the new applicants getting technical assistance? So it's said that new projects want to come in or are wanted, but there is nothing. I remember something being offered for new applicants having technical assistance, but I didn't hear anything else about that. And also, when you appeal, I feel like, because I witnessed this, that the PEC members should not change that are doing the appeal. It shouldn't be a new set of people that come in for the appeal. And also, this was for a snowfall, and the entity was scored 0 with lived experience, and that's what they had on a range of 0 to 5. So how do you safeguard and oversight those things that will take place?
Yeah, those are great questions, and this is a lot of what we've been talking about over the last few years. We did have a workshop where we brought in people who might be interested, different agencies and whatnot, to kind of start talking about the process. One of the tricky things about this committee's work and the COC competition funds specifically is that those COC dollars are very restricted. This competition, it's smothered in red tape. It's really it's really technical and challenging. There are a lot of kind of threshold issues that HUD is looking for in terms of projects that are capable of being scored and being funded. And unfortunately, to your point, it can be really tricky for new agencies to want to take that on, right? But then also to be able to do it successfully. So you're right in that there's a big gap in kind of ramping up to getting new projects access to these COC funds. And certainly that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of these same projects in there. I'm not sure the status of, those kind of technical assistance efforts. I know at one point we were looking to get some funding for that, and then I think that fell through. And during this transition, I'm glad that you brought that up because I think that's a really important thing for us to keep thinking about and make sure that we continue those efforts. I can say, from the committee's perspective, we're really committed to that. Like I said, we had a really hearty discussion this time about the contributor program, and I know the contributor is not a new agency to the community, but this is the first time that they've ever applied for these funds. We were really excited to see that. And so we would love to see others do it, but we also understand that there's a big gap in getting up to kind of run projects funded by these funds just because it's really technical. They have a lot of hoops that HUD wants us to jump through. And then to your point about the appeals, we're certainly open to discussing kind of that process. I think that's kind of, above my head, if that makes sense, in terms of kind of how that appeal process works. But if that's something that this council would like us to look into, we would be happy to do that.
And I'd be glad to send the appeals materials out. It's a form to file appeal, and then there is a sheet, the 4 basic reasons that are valid for even being granted an appeal. I also wanted to say a couple things, Kanitha, that the PEC did, and I did request from HUD specific technical assistance just for cases that, like you're talking about, agencies that need to build their own capacity and understanding of how to fill out the application, how to application, and then how you're judged on your own entity's capacity. Number of agencies just don't have the capacity out there, and it would be a years-long process, I think. Develop that doesn't mean don't start. But the technical assistance, I think HUD was just about ready to start that capacity building technical assistance and then decided to shift priorities in Nashville, looking at leadership and that kind of stuff. So it did fall through, as Carrie's saying. Technical assistance can take a lot of forms, though. You've got a whole lot of folks in this room who know a lot about this funding source. Peers who get, the agencies who get the funding, the collaborative applicant should be able to provide that to you. And the best time for that kind of technical assistance, and it would last months to kind of really get you on board, is outside of the competitive fray. So once October 1st swings around, later in the fall, very early in the spring, so that you can either build your understanding of whether this agency is, or if this funding is the right source to go after, or maybe you ought to go after something simpler where you begin to build a foundation of administering smaller amounts before you get in with the sharks. And then one more point, that there was a really great discussion for going after the domestic violence bonus amount. We met even before the NOFO was dropped, and there were all of the domestic violence agencies were there as well as others. And it was a great discussion. The DV agencies were not poised at this point to apply for the bonus. And so a lot of discussion back and forth. The Salvation Army was willing to be the applicant. That seemed to be great to all the members involved. And they also recommended that the Army apply to serve single individuals because the other domestic violence bonuses are focusing on families. And there really isn't a focus on single women as well as single men. And so it's going to go after the funding to serve singles instead of families, which is a nice change.
Any other questions? Are you ready for the question?
If I may, I just wanted to make sure that your observation that, I think I understood your observation to be the fiscal year 2022 rankings look very similar to the fiscal year 2023 rankings, and you were confused by that. So I just wanted to make sure that I was reading your face, that you have a clear explanation as to why that looks the way it looks. That's all.
No, thank you. I'm good. Thank you.
Are you all ready for the question, or Jamie, did you have a question?
I was actually going to go ahead and move that we go ahead and approve the continuum of care fiscal year 2023 rankings for the NOFA.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Jamie. Tell me your last. Villegas, seconded by Wendell Seagroves, that we accept the rankings of the Performance Evaluation Committee for fiscal year 2023 NOFO funding. Are there any questions? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you so much to the committee. Next, we will have the reallocation process also that was tabled from last month. You all have been in receipt of this in your email as well as today. And because I did want you to have the policy in writing, there was an explanation. So hopefully we can briefly recap this and then be ready for the question. And so, Ms. Dietz, if you would please move forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. So you may have seen me here, not here, but downtown last month, talking about this reallocation policy that we came up with. I went through it at the time. I'm not going to go into quite as much detail today because I've already taken up plenty of your time. But, basically, one of the other things that HUD wants us to do is to have a process for making sure that funds can move to the right place when they're not in the right place. And so that may happen a couple of different ways. One way might be an agency decides, hey, we've been doing this continuum of care project. We don't want to do this anymore. Maybe it's too much red tape. Maybe it just doesn't align with their mission and where they're going. Another way is if projects score poorly enough during the competition process that they fall below a threshold. In that case, they'll be put automatically into a performance improvement plan. And in the event that performance does not improve sufficiently during I believe it's a 6-month period, then the PEC is, through this policy, detailing how we can involuntarily take those funds from an agency that is not using them or not using them correctly and getting them to an agency, a program that is prepared to. So I hope that makes sense. Again, I'm happy to field any questions. I know y'all didn't have this in front of you last month. So if you've had a time to take a look and you have any questions or if there's anything else, I'm happy to address.
Any questions from the body? And the policy is also before you. Seeing no questions, are we ready for the question? Would anyone like to move forward?
I move that the HBC approve the draft reallocation policy as presented.
Second.
Thank you. There's been a motion on the floor by Deanna, second by Jamie, that we accept application policy presented by the Performance Evaluation. Are there any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Again, thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, moving forward, we will have Susie give us a quick conversation around our continuum of care anti-racism training. I'm sorry, Jen.
I forgot one thing in my update that may be relevant for folks here. September 18th at 1, the State Housing Authority Board agency will have its meeting. It is online and you can watch it. The reason I'm bringing it up is for the first time, what will be before the board is a set-aside amount in the qualified allocation plan for tax credit projects for projects that house the unhoused. And that is the first time the state agency has decided to consider setting aside some money specifically for the unhoused. That has been something we at the city level have been encouraging the state to do. And the fact that a year of lobbying, they proposed that, I'm hopeful. So, you know, like this body, there is that opening statute required public comment period. So I would say if you feel so inclined to tune in and virtually comment, that is up to you to do so. Angie Hubbard did provide, when they were considering this change to the QAP, she did provide a letter in support of this change, knowing how desperate we are in this city to gain more housing. So we're hopeful. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. The statewide group working on permanent supportive housing is continuing to allocate for this and other allocations and state funding toward creating more permanent supportive housing. So you can tune in online, you can go to THDA's website and it can show you how to do that. But I think that is a good first step with the state.
All right, thank you, Susie.
Yeah, onto the anti-racism training. There's a day-long conference on Friday from 8:30 to 4:30. It will be at the Tennessee Primary Care Association. We sent out a couple of invitations expecting, the Equity Committee was expecting, they were organizing all of this, about maybe 60 people to register. We had to close registration when it was about 676. Which is great. It was popular, and it shows that there's a lot of interest. So I think we ought to think about another one so that other folks can come. We are lucky to have the 3 trainers basically paid for via the city's grant that Stacy Hornkoch has been working on. They are folks who are out of New Orleans, and they will be conducting the training all day, and be glad to summarize the major points and what we learn at the next meeting.
All right, any questions for Susie related to the training? For those who are able to register, we will see you on Friday. For those not, we will still, because one of the things that this has come about is that we know what the numbers show is that there is racial inequity in homelessness. And so we want to be mindful of that and that there have been some racial tensions within this community. And so our goal is how do we better improve those situations so that we can move forward in a way that recognizes all persons. So more to come and definitely commitment. As you all know below, there is an anti-racism pledge, and I have honestly been asked why, as the chair, do we not recite that at the beginning of our meetings? And for me, until we are more committed to the cause, I feel like it's really performative. So I have decided not to do that, but I do encourage people to read that and to really decide if they are committed to the pledge prior to us just reciting something. So moving forward to the strategic plan refresh, Hannah.
Hello again, everybody. I am here on behalf of Jeff Gibson, the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, who could not come. And I'm going to talk to you about everything that's happened with the strategic plan in hopes that we can vote on it again today. So last year, the strategic plan was brought before the Planning Council, who returned it to the committee, looked for more specifics and specific metrics in the plan. Since that process, the committee has met again several times in the spring, and then in July released the plan for public comment, and this past weekend met to review the public comments and incorporate so that we can talk about today. So first, thanks to the Strategic Plan Committee, that is Susie, April, myself, Jeff Gibson, Dr. Beth Shin, Rod DeVore from the United Way, Kenitha, and Vicki Badger all participated on the committee. Jeff always likes to introduce it by saying this is not meant to be a detailed specific action plan. This is a broad guiding document for the community. It's not going to contain the specifics of every single step we need to take to end homelessness, but is instead about our strategy of how we're going to end homelessness in the community. Since the public comment and since we last talked about it at this meeting, there's 3 major areas I want to point out that have changed. So first, it previously had suggested committees under all the objectives. Those have been removed, and instead there is a specific objective in 1.1a that says that the committee chairs and the executive committee should meet to assign ownership of all the objectives to various committees. So they can decide that collaboratively. Second, there were a lot of comments about metrics and goals. I want to first state that objective 1.4 is entirely about metrics to measure our progress in ending homelessness. It does not have specific goals. What it does do is lay out specific metrics we need to measure disaggregated by race on a quarterly basis, state that we need to have a public dashboard of all of those metrics for people to see that's regularly updated, and say that annually there need to be goals set for all of these metrics. So the Strategic Planning Committee did not think they were the body to actually set the goals, but thought that should be a more involved COC process. So instead put a step in this plan to require setting the goals and reviewing and adjusting based on data annually, with a recommendation that that would go through the Data Committee and the Homelessness Planning Council to set those goals. The third one that is a major change since the last time we looked at this is in Objective 2.2. It used to just focus on ending chronic homelessness, and it has now expanded to focus on ending all homelessness with a focus on chronic homelessness, based on incorporating an approach of targeted universalism that was adopted from the federal strategic plan to end homelessness. This is an approach that the federal government uses in their strategic plan, so we wanted to add it here. What targeted universalism is essentially having a universal goal and then having tailored solutions for different populations to reach that goal. So recognizing that different groups of people experiencing homelessness are going to need different solutions to end homelessness, and tailoring solutions to those specific groups while working towards the same goal for everybody. Those are the 3 major changes since the last time we looked at this document. Strategic Planning Committee is asking this group to vote on it and recommends a pass, and then also for the Homelessness Planning Council to do a deep dive on the plan at the retreat that has been discussed that's coming up. Are there any questions?
Any questions related to the strategic plan? I know that also this body was asked to provide comments related to the strategic refresh. But are there any questions at this time? If so, we're happy to try to answer those. Have concerns been addressed? We're understanding where we're at with metrics at this point is that we're waiting as we continue, because oftentimes with strategic plan, you put those metrics in and you don't have the data to support it. Then sometimes it's just creating something. So any questions? Deanna, and then I'll come to you, Jamie. Jamie?
So I want to thank the committee for its work. I really am a bigger fan of this document than I was before. And I really want to call out the objective 2.2. It is, I'm loving what I see here. A lot of the details and kind of that we were asking for, I think, were addressed. And I just want to thank the committee for its work into addressing our concerns.
Thanks, Jamie.
Not so much a question for Hannah, but more so just food for thought for this body with regard to objective 1.4. I don't know if this is something we could consider as a part of our agenda to discuss or have that date for the retreat and a specific kind of due date for when these metrics and goals will be developed and presented kind of back out to the community for comment, since there's been a lot of consistent comment about wanting to see the goals and metrics and giving ourselves a timeline to help produce that. And that's my comment for food for thought.
We can definitely consider that. I think also, though, this takes into consideration what those committees want those to be. And so some of what I've heard before is that This isn't a dictatorship and that folks need to feel the buy-in. And so my concern in some ways that we can definitely help guide that conversation, but if we go ahead and set that, then it sometimes takes away a little bit of the leeway from those committees. But I will write that to my to-do list in terms of when the retreat will be. And we will, once we get past today with this first orientation, we will definitely look at what happened for the board orientation is we just sent out a survey to see what dates would work. So perhaps we'll do the same for the overall board to look at a retreat, but give you all enough time to plan and what that looks like. Does that sound doable? Okay, can I get a shake of heads consensus wise? And then definitely at that point, what we will probably do at that point then is within the board, maybe ask for folks to help in terms of what that agenda could look like. Are there any more questions related to the strategic refresh? Or are you ready for the question?
I'd like to move approval of the Homelessness Planning Council strategic plan for the next 3 years.
Great. There has been a motion on the floor by Jamie, a second by Dr. Inslee that we accept the strategic plan refresh. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries, and I do have noted that we will look at the objective for our board retreat. Thank you all so much, and thank you to that committee for your diligence and hard work. Moving forward with the collaborative applicant ad hoc committee report, Giovanni Aco, who will be towards your rear, will provide that report to us. It is, and thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am happy to say that the ad hoc committee, our last meeting will be on Monday, and we will be reviewing the public comment. The public comment went out about 2 weeks ago, and it should end on Friday, September the 14th, and it's Thursday, and that's Thursday on the 13th. All public comment should be in, and then after that, we will meet. We will provide a final report. I am one of the co-chairs along with Steve Ryder and Dee Dee Bird. We have done a lot of work on this committee to ensure that we provided Davidson County with a good product. So going forward, anybody applying to be the collaborative applicant in this city will have a complete process. So we are excited to be concluding. Again, we've done a lot of work. We've been meeting for about 3 months, and some months we met every week. And so do you all have any questions? Kanita?
How do you find the document to review and submit comment?
Susie?
I've sent out twice to listserv, so I think it would have been, if you look for collaborative applicant or CAA in your inbox, or just look for MDHA and my name, it should be in your inbox.
I might need it again.
I'll send it to you.
My email's all messed up.
Yep, be glad to send it to you.
And I would also like to thank all the committee members that worked on this ad hoc committee and saw this through to the end. Again, thank you, and we'll have a final report next month.
Thank you so much to the committee. I know it's been a journey for sure. We appreciate you all and your work. But again, this is just another step of, you all know one of my goals has been that we have a strengthened bylaws, some more procedural steps so that people, one of the things I've noticed about this community is that we have a lot of institutional knowledge, but that sometimes doesn't always get translated to the next team. And so know that we are definitely working on these processes, and I appreciate each of you for your work. And also thank you, Kanitha, for bringing that up about the emails. So
the collaborative applicant has gone to a new email system. And so oftentimes what we have learned is that those emails are going to folks' spam. So it's really important if you all look in your junk email for the emails, and it's titled a little bit differently. Susie, remind me what the title is on those emails.
It'll be coming from me, MDHA, and my name. And then, of course, the subject heading will vary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just look for that. And I know if you're an Outlook person, one of the things I had to do was take off the focus and the unfocus just so that I could get them all. And once I did that, the emails started coming. So just be mindful to sort of look at those, to look at those emails, because oftentimes that's where the information is coming for public comment. All right, you all, thank you for hanging in there. We have our story of progress from Lowe's, Mr. Hanson.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, truly, and to be appointed by the mayor and the mayor's office, Ginger, and the team. Congratulations on all of your success, and I wish you best of luck in the future. So you may ask yourself, hey, why is there a guy from Lowe's in here, like talking about what Lowe's is doing? And so one of the things that I want to put forth is that there's a lot of resources currently, I believe, to be untapped in the retail community. A lot of the retail community is comprised of Fortune 50 companies with resources, donation budgets, and a interest in helping communities truly. We have an outstanding CEO, Marvin Ellison, that came in about 4 years ago to Lowe's, and just if you ever have a chance to look up what he does and what Lowe's is doing and what retail is doing to help end homelessness, I think you would be very impressed. So I'm excited to announce today. All of this is public knowledge, and I haven't gone through my orientation yet, so I'm going to, keep it short. But I was very fortunate to partner with April. I am in charge of operations, asset protection for Lowe's in Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, all the way up to Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And we have a store on Charlotte Pike that is very close to the Brookmead Park location. And so that's where initially I was able to get involved, work with April and her team, which are just outstanding, and help provide some resources that may not have been there in the past. So that's the introduction of how we got involved. But Lowe's is investing $100 million to restore and revitalize community spaces across the country through the Lowe's Hometowns program. Each year through 2026, Lowe's Hometowns will complete 100 signature projects chosen from consumer nominations, plus nearly 1,700 projects through Lowe's stores, supply chain locations, and store support centers across the country. The first part of our project, we nominated the Room in the Inn to help revitalize their bathrooms, which initially were designed to service a lot less people than that are in there. And there was a lot of damage that happened. And so we submitted them for the grant, and we were very fortunate that they won. And the very first phase of that was last week, where we had 10 Red Vest associates go in and install cabinet doors for them so that they could so the residents could have a place to lock some of their goods up, because some of them in the past had been taken. And so that was a great first step, and I'm very excited about the September 30th all-day event that Lowe's will be putting on there with 35 Red Vest associates. We're calling it a Red Vest Day of Projects, but we'll be helping to prepare the Room in the Inn's 38th winter shelter season. So this will be organizing winter supplies, toiletry items for shower programs, painting, changing out ceiling tiles, hanging artwork, organizing classroom spaces, filling the bookshelves with donated books, and sprucing up several common areas. And then the big chunk of that project, and we'll talk about total dollar amount probably in a future meeting, but revitalizing the bathrooms and then adding some apartments in Room in the Inn. So a very, very very proud moment for Lowe's and a great thing to be a part of. But I'm excited for the different viewpoint I can help bring to this council, and then also to help bring some of those resources that may have previously been unrealized, because there's a lot more than just Lowe's. There's a whole retail community out there. And, as you know, a lot of times some of the homeless encampments can be very close to retail locations, and there's things, in my opinion, that our retail community can do a better job of to be a better partner in the community. So, thank you all for your time today, and I look forward to contributing in the future.
So thank you so much. One of the things we were also committed to as this board leadership was to diversify this board. We have heard people often say that we need to tap into what are the resources? How are we really helping? And so part of why we are looking at diversity of this board is for those reasons. So as we move forward, the nominating committee and people who are serving on those, let's be mindful of what resources are untapped, because we know that Susie has said this forever, is that we should not just be relying on the HUD dollars that come, but what are some other resources? So with that being said, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing how we can include our collaboration and partnership. Also, thank you all so much for your time and diligence today. Just a reminder, first of all, I should have said this in the beginning. I sincerely apologize for the change of venue. We do not flip-flop around. But we are also at the mercy of Metro, and Metro decided they wanted to sanitize Metro chambers, I guess, for the new folks coming in, which we want them to be well and safe. But we got the notice at the last minute, and then the jury room that we typically would use in lieu of that was also booked. So here we are. But just as a reminder, next month we will be back at the courthouse, and then in January we'll switch, but hopefully back to Howard School Building, I believe. And from then, that should be our location. So thank you all for your flexibility and your time. For those of you all who are new board members, if you would come back at 10:30, we want to get started with our board orientation. Otherwise, I will see you all next month, and have a great rest of your day, and meeting adjourned at 10:24.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.